Guys, I hope you guys are still enjoying these tutorials and I'm not boring you too much. Today we're going to be making cupcakes and we're going to be using the same batter that we used for our cake donuts, so you already know how to make it. We're already good to go. So this tutorial is really going to be about decorating. We're going to decorate some how you would normally decorate cupcakes, and we're also going to decorate some in an Easter theme so you guys can get ready for the holidays at home.
The first thing I'm going to do is line my mini cupcake pan and scoop my batter into each of the liners. I heat my oven to 350 degrees and these bake for about 15 minutes, but if you have hot spots, make sure you rotate so they can all bake evenly. If they have a little bit of a dome, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. So for the first half of these cupcakes, I'm going to be doing floral cupcakes, and I'm going to fill them half with the chocolate ganache we made last week and half with the salted caramel that we made last week. For all of these floral cupcakes, I'm going to be using a 104 tip. It's the petal tip. So when you're using this tip, the fat end or the wider end always goes towards the center. Whether I'm piping a rose or some of these fantasy flowers, I always put the wider end toward the center because a petal is very thin on the outside, and that's what we're going for. So I'm just creating this flower by going out in a small arched motion. And then this one, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm moving it up and down at the same time to create more of a ruffle. For the pink ones, we just did one layer of petals around, but for these yellow ones, we're doing a double layer of ruffles. It's important to keep that fat end toward the center of your cupcake so the edges of your petals can be thin like a real petal. For these first two flowers, we had the tip flat and parallel to the cupcake, but for the next two, we're going to do roses. So that means that we're going to have it perpendicular or standing straight up. You want the thin end to be the end that's up and the fatter end to be the one toward the cupcake. For these first roses, we're doing cabbage roses, which means they're just straight around the edges. So you're essentially just going to be going around and around, keeping that tip straight up and down, and it'll create a rose shape. You'll see in the middle, we started with a little bit of a C, and that creates the center of the rose. And then again, you're just going to go around and around in a circle. You're not going up or down. You're just trying to keep your tip flat on the cupcake and follow along. Once you're finished, you'll see that you have something that looks similar to a rose. For these cabbage roses, we're starting flat and keep going around the cupcake, but for the roses we're going to do for the yellow ones, we want to build up a little bit of the center, and we're going to be making little arc shapes. So for the pink roses, we're going straight and following along on the cupcake, but for the yellow ones, we're making almost like little rainbow shapes with the tip. Again, fat end toward the cupcake, thin end in the air, and you're just going to be making little rainbow shapes as you go around and around. Now, one thing you want to do to make your roses look more realistic is try to have an odd number of petals. So when you go around the center, have 3, then 5 after that, 7 after that, and it really depends on the size of your cupcake or how big you want your rose to be, and that's kind of when you can decide when to stop. To finish our floral cupcakes, I'm going to be using a Wilton 352 tip, and this will help me create leaves. All I'm going to do is apply pressure as I'm pushing against the cupcake, and then when I'm coming back or releasing from the cupcake, I'm also going to release the pressure, and that's just going to create small leaf shapes around each of the flowers. Floral cupcakes can be pretty tricky, but my best advice is to keep trying and practicing, and eventually you will end up with something that you can be proud of. For our next set of cupcakes, we're going to be doing Easter cupcakes. And to start off, I want to start piping some of my decorations. Now, you could definitely make these from fondant if you have it on hand, but I know right now with everyone being at home, it's hard to come by. So I've decided to do all of my Easter decorations in buttercream. So I'm starting off by piping little round dollops of our orange buttercream. And once those are finished, I'm going to again use the leaf tip that we just used for our floral cupcakes and pipe little stems. Once I've finished piping all of the stems, I'm going to pop these into the fridge for about half an hour so that they can harden and we can use them on our cupcakes. They're going to be little carrot tops. The next set of decorations I'm making is going to be buttercream as well. So on a tray lined with parchment paper, I'm going to pipe 4 large white circles using a round tip. On either side of each white circle, I'm going to pipe 2 smaller circles, and I'm going to extend the end upwards. So they're not perfect circles, they're more of an oval. We don't want them to be perfect circles because these are actually going to be our feet. Once we've piped all of the feet using that same piping bag, we're going to go onto the top center of each circle, and we're just going to pipe small round circles. Using a toothpick, I'm going to go onto each of those little small spheres that we just piped and fluff them up a bit. These are going to be our bunny's tail because we're making small little bunny butts. Once all your tails are nice and fluffy, you can take a small piping bag, a Ziploc bag, anything with a very small tip, and pipe in pink buttercream, your little toes, and the little pads of each foot. You don't have to do this part, but it does make it look more like feet, which will make these look more like bunny bumps when you apply them to the cupcakes. Again, like with our carrots, once these are all finished, we're going to put them in the fridge to chill for about half an hour. This will allow us to pick them up and place them onto our cupcakes. If you try to move them now, they'll be too soft to move and you'll end up squishing them before you're able to use them. While those are in the fridge, we're going to start piping our cupcakes. Using any buttercream flavor of your choice, I'm just using vanilla, we're going to pipe dollops onto the top of each cupcake. Now these don't have to look perfect because for our carrot and bunny cupcakes, we're going to be rolling these into some Oreo cookie crumbs. Now for the carrot ones, we want it to be fully covered over the whole entire cupcake, but for the bunny bums, we don't mind if some of that buttercream is showing. And the reason for that is because buttercream doesn't always stick that well to Oreo crumbs, but we want to stick our bunny butts right on top of those cupcakes. For the carrot cupcakes, even though we do want the buttercream carrots that we made to stick, we're actually going to be inserting them, so they'll stick to the buttercream that's underneath the Oreo crumbs. Once our decorations have chilled, I apply a little bit of buttercream to the bottom of each bunny butt and stick it to the top of each cupcake. For our little carrots, since they're nice and chilled, you can actually stick them into the soft buttercream that's on top of each cupcake so they look like they're growing out of a garden. The reason we're using Oreo crumbs for this is because we want it to look like dirt, we want carrots in a garden, or like a little bunny is digging to look for those carrots. This is something simple that you can do at home. You don't really need special ingredients or tips, and that's what makes it so much fun. Now for our final cupcakes, we're going to be using our grass tip. We used this the other day on our donuts, so if you still have some of that chocolate buttercream left, that's perfect. And we're going to be using mini eggs. So I just decided to do pink and yellow, but you could use whatever color you want. And we're going to turn these mini eggs into little birds. Now I have a food decorating pen to draw on each little eye, but if you don't have that, you can simply create some black buttercream and use that for the eyes instead. Now, you want to make sure you draw on all of the eyes before you proceed to the next step. Otherwise, it can be really difficult to get into those small spaces. Our next step, we're going to use our orange buttercream. Now again, I'm just using a small parchment triangle to create a piping bag, but if you have a Ziploc bag or a small piping bag, that'll work perfectly. You just want to cut off a small corner, so you have a very tiny tip, and we're just going to pipe little beaks. And all I'm doing is applying pressure when I'm against the mini egg, and then pulling away and releasing that pressure. I hope you guys have enjoyed creating these fun Easter cupcakes with me. They're definitely something that you can create at home. So if you have any questions, just be sure to let me know and click on the title for full recipe.